Hi everybody, it's very nice to meet you on the YouTube. I'm Daniel and I'm Korean. It's my first time to present my ideas and my opinions on the YouTube. As you hear it, I'm Korean and I'm not very good at English. My pronunciation and my expression and my ability on the vocabulary on the English is very limited. But I hope you understand. And if you have any opinions and questions and feedbacks on my YouTube, then please write down on the reply channel or thread or by the email provided under this. I'm a Korean, as you see, and I have some opportunity to introduce Korea to the foreigners. Usually it was based upon the history and some kind of statistics and facts. But I have found that the foreigners' perspectives on the Korea is a little different from that of Koreans. Usually we Koreans understand the Korean history by the order of chronological order. But foreigners were not very interested in it. They were interested usually on three folds. The first one is the economic growth of Korea. And the second one was usually the democracy of Korea. And the third one, maybe the most important one on these days, Korean pop culture. So I will try to introduce and explain you how Korea made economic growth and democracy and pop culture, which is overwhelming in the worldwide marketplace. It will not be a long story, and I will make it without any much preparations. So please keep tuned. Okay, let's begin. I have prepared just 13 slides, and along the slides, I will explain of the three major points to understand Korea. This curve is about the Korean economic growth. As you see on my mouse pointer, from 1910, at the time, the Korea was occupied by Japan, and it was the start or beginning of the colonial period. And until the 1950s, there was a war. And the 1960s, Korea was maybe one of the most poorest countries in the world. I was born in 1966, and I'm now over than 50, and still I remember the days when we were very, very poor, and still I don't think Korea, I cannot think Korea is a rich country, but it is acceptable for most of us that Korea now is not that poor country. The takeoff was made in 1960s, and 1960s and 70s and 80s, the economic growth goes rapidly, and the 1990s was the golden age. But as you see, there was a fell down of the curve in late 1990s. It was economic crisis. So now Korea is not very poor country. As you see, until the 1945, Korea was colony of Japanese empire. So liberation from Japanese Korean colonial rule was made by 1945. But there was a war in 1950s until 1953, and the first breakthrough was 1962. So from now, 6 times of 5-year economic development plans were made. But financial crisis was made in 1997 and 1998. So the GNI, per capita GNI, was felt down very seriously. And Korea's economy has overcome. It is very important how they overcome the financial crisis and economic turmoils. I remember vividly of the days where Korea was just like a concentration camp. As you see, I was born in 1966, and now I'm 55 years old. And when I was in elementary school, in one class, over than 70 students were studying, over than 70, not 17, 70, 70. It was simply because Korea had no money, and no money means that we didn't have any money to build schools and classrooms. So this type of the street was very common when I was young and a kid. And this is the picture of 1970s Korea marketplace. Not very rich country, as you see, but now it's completely different. It's a picture of Seoul and another picture of Seoul. Now many people is in debate whether Korean economy could surpass the Japanese economy or not. Anyway, now Korea is not a very poor country. We wish to know how this miracle of economic growth was made. The second one is democracy. It's seen not very long, many years ago. It was just 5 years ago when the impeachment of the president was made. Korean President Park Geun-hye was impeached by the procedure completely compatible with the laws and constitution. And as you see, this is people power and very peaceful with candles. But just 30 years ago, it was not. There was a time in the street riot was made, and this was the usual. I remember the days. So we wish to know how Koreans achieved their democracy. And the third one is the pop culture. Many years ago, Korea had no money to feed the singers and the band. So the most prestigious and the best market was US military camp. This is one of it, and this is one of it. But now, as you see, it's Psy. He's world famous, and now simply the number one in the world is BTS. We wish to know how Koreans achieved their pop culture is now overwhelming in the world. Okay, now it's the end of the first meeting. It was very nice to meet you on the YouTube, and I hope you will be with me to understand Korea. Thank you. See you next time. Bye-bye.